In this video, I will be giving a spoiler review of Star Wars: The Bad Batch, Season 1, Episode 14, War-Mantle. Again, it's a spoiler review. Watch this at your own discretion. If you're not caught up with the series or you haven't watched this most recent episode, I would suggest doing so and coming back to this video. If you don't mind spoilers, then I guess you're okay to be here. Just don't ruin it for everyone else. Just keep in mind, I'll be talking about the episode. I will be going by scene and relaying my thoughts. I'll be exploring concepts, and just as well, I'll be giving potential predictions. It's a lot of speculation as to how the rest of the season is going to play out. It's going to be very vague, but it's very fun to explore. So just keep that in mind as this review goes on. But before that, welcome to All Day the Geek Way. I'm Jet. I hope you're enjoying your day the Geek Way. And if you haven't already subscribed, maybe do so. It helps me out. Give the video a like. Maybe share it. It's up to you. But it helps with the YouTube algorithm in getting views and being able to explore these concepts, being able to engage in the conversation about these geek-related things, whether it's Star Wars, anime, comic books, anything else. But it would help out a lot. And I would appreciate, I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers before November. We'll see what happens. But any help is greatly appreciated. On to the review. I liked it. I liked this episode. I thought it was really well done. As a proper cliffhanger, it explores the rise of the Empire, going from a fledgling empire as they grow into a mature bird. And you get to see the disparity in combat skills between clone commandos and ordinary TK units. We see how this affects the clone troopers. And we get Gregor. I love Gregor. He's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. I mean, along with the clone units, and I'm not talking about Boba Fett, even though he is a clone, he's not one of the clone units. Gregor and Rex are probably my favorite clones. I've also loved clone commandos since I was a kid, back when the Star Wars Republic Commando video game came out in 2005, and we got to follow Delta Squad. Clone commandos are my favorite units, like favorite reinforcements or favorite infantry in all of Star Wars. I think they're awesome. And we get to see Gregor. He's fun. I love Gregor. I love fun. I love fun Gregor. But on to the episode. Let's talk about it. So we start the episode seeing a prisoner escape. We learn this is Gregor. And he's being pursued by what may look like other clone units. We don't know. We don't see the heads on any of these people, but they have like these aliens that are acting as dogs and pursuing Gregor. And he plants a device under a log of a tree, or a tree I should just say, and he ends up captured. He's shot by multiple stun arrays, I think one on the leg, his right leg, his arm, his shoulder, and then finally he's incapacitated and is captured. Well, we go back to the ship. I shouldn't say we go back. We go to the ship where the Bad Batch is at, and they get a distress call, and they learn it's from Rex. And Rex basically says, hey, I have a friend who's been captured. Can you go rescue him? And this kind of bothers me because, I mean, thankfully Rex is used as a plot device to move the story forward because it helps motivate some characters in their decisions. However, it's the typical episodic story thing, like, I can't talk for much. I can't talk super long because, well, I can't do it. I'm doing something that you don't know and the audience doesn't know, but I'm doing something. It's super secret. And I need you to do this thing. And when they ask, what are you doing? He's just like, oh, gotta go. Or why are we doing this? He's like, oh, gotta go. And just kind of cuts off the call. And I always find that device sort of weird. It's just like it seems like whatever he's doing is kind of miscellaneous from the rest of the story. Like, it probably has nothing to do with the rescue of Gregor, but he's in the middle of something and he's just like, oh, hold on, I need to make a distress call to the Bad Batch about Gregor. It's probably related to. We don't know, though. It's just a quick and convenient plot device to move the story forward. And what's good about this is, even though Omega has something to say about it, like we gotta do it, she's not part of what I call the Omega problem. What we've noticed after the first episode is, like, something happens, and anytime something happens, Omega's like, well, we gotta do it. And then the rest of the batch is just like, she said so, I guess we're doing it. There's a little bit more contention, especially with Hunter and the rest of the batch. Hunter and Tech are basically saying, like, we can't do this. But finally, Echo has say. Echo says, we got to do it. Like, we got to do this. We got to rescue this clone, even if he's a reg. Like, Rex said it. And Echo and Rex have a relationship. We've seen this throughout the Clone Wars series. So it's good to see that he finally has a say. And Wrecker, this entire time, he cracks me up during this scene. He's like, Echo's got a point. And then Tech says, just want to give you a reminder, we're doing a job for Sid. If we don't do the job, we don't get paid. If we don't get paid, we don't get food. And Wrecker's like, oh, Tech's got a point. And then it goes to Omega's just like, well, we got to do it. Rescuing someone is... Well, we got to go. Rescuing someone is more important than getting paid. And Wrecker's like, oh, the kid's got a point. And it literally made me laugh out loud. I love Wrecker, though. He's one of my favorite characters in the series. Well, what ends up happening is they end up going to the planet to rescue the clone trooper, who we know eventually is Gregor. Before that, though, we're back on Kamino with Admiral Rampart and Crosshair having a dialogue about an operation and also talking about the effectiveness of the Kaminoans. We have the scientist Kaminoan lady going down the hallway with young clone troopers who are like, oh, we're still going to be soldiers, right? She's like, of course, you will be soldiers. In like that monotone but calming sort of voice. And then it's this, I can't remember the scientist lady. I can't even remember the prime minister's name. Forgive me. So just going to refer to them as the Kaminoans. Well, she talks to the prime minister, and the prime minister says, like, all of our contracts have been canceled with the Empire. The Empire is more ruthless, and they're not as forgiving as the Republic. So chances are we might be killed. We might just be eliminated. Start evacuating. And so we get to finally explore how the Kaminoans are affected, and it's also late into the clone project. And it's going to affect the rest of the clones who are bred to be soldiers, specifically for the Clone Wars, too. Well, let's go back to the batch real fast, and they're doing the rescue, and they go out of the ship to look for the tracker. Omega finds the tracker, but there's no clone. So Hunter is able to track where the clone has went, and they ultimately determine that there might be an Imperial base, or there's something inside the mountain. So it's going to be Echo, Tech, and Hunter who are going to explore that mountain. And he tells Wrecker and Omega, go back to the ship. And as soon as Omega has any contention, he says, some things are up for debate, just like the rescue mission. This isn't. So they go back to the ship. And they start making their way up to the base. Well, they use their goggles and they notice that there's clone commandos, and they're being followed by new troopers with different armor. So this is where we start to see the illusions and kind of the foreshadowing, not foreshadowing, but it's alluded that the clones are going obsolete. There's new armors being made for new units. And they figure out, like, obviously it's an Imperial base. We can't really break in. If we try to, we're going in blind. And it's Hunter and Tech that start going back to the ship, and Echo kind of stops them, and he gives this really good speech. They say, if we try to rescue this clone, we're just going in blind. We need to have a plan. And Echo's just like, you guys went in blind when you rescued me from the Separatists on Skeko Minor, and you managed to do it. We'll be able to do it with this clone here. And you could tell it's Echo being heavily motivated by Rex, and also having faith in his team. And ultimately, that's what makes Hunter and Tech decide, okay, we're going to go in, but we have to go on top of this elevator to make it in. Before that, though, they make a transmission to Omega and Wrecker on the ship, basically saying, like, we're going in. Omega's like, we want to go, and he says, no, just want to let you know, though, we're going to lose transmission, so be prepared. They go on the elevator, on top of the elevator to infiltrate. They get into the base, and then they have to use the encryption codes to figure out where the clone prisoner is at. We also learned that the encryption, it's an Imperial encryption. It's not the standard Republic encryption that clones can use no matter what. It's Imperial, it's different, it takes a little bit longer. And we also see a scene of a clone commando being able to get through a door, and he's being followed by the new troopers in the new armor. And Echo kind of gives out a dialogue like, oh, this is weird. There's 50 clone commandos and 1,000 TK troopers. And Tech is like, what are TK troopers? And we're never really answered that at this point, because they figure out where the clone is, aka Captain Traitor. So you see a clone in a jail cell talking to a new trooper, being like, hey, can you get me this? The trooper says like, no, I'm not doing that for you, traitor. He's like, that's Captain Traitor to you, and his voice is cracking. As soon as you hear that voice crack, or at least as soon as I heard it, I was just like, it's Gregor. It's got to be Gregor. And I was so stoked, because a lot of the dialogue was really fun, especially when the Bad Batch finally makes it in. They're like, are you CC5576? And he's like, it depends. Who's asking? It's like, we were sent by Rex. He's like, oh, in that case, my name is Gregor. Let's go. And they start making their escape. I loved Gregor throughout this episode. He was so much fun. The witty banter, he was hilarious. He got me to literally laugh out loud, more than Rex, actually. We get to see Gregor's capabilities. We get to see his interaction with the Bad Batch. I've loved Gregor since the Clone Wars, as I mentioned earlier, and even since Rebels. Now, unfortunately, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched Rebels, like, close your ears for the next 10 seconds, but he dies in Rebels. R.I.P. Gregor. But during the Clone Wars, he was on that desolate planet that the droids landed on, and he's the one who had amnesia from like that really bad Republic, that battle where the Republic lost. And he lost his memories, and he forgot that he was a clone commander. He got his memories back. He helped the droids and the colonel escape on the ship, and he blew the spaceport blew up because it had a bunch of explosives that the separatists were trying to transport to a Republic ship. I'm kind of going on a rant, but point being, I love Gregor. I think Gregor's awesome, and I love the clone commandos and him as a clone commando, and him being outside of the Republic and just being fun. And he was just so much fun this episode, so it was great to see him. Well, as they're escaping, going back to the story, they're looking at how the commandos and the new troops are acting, and Gregor figures out, oh, they're doing an inspection. We won't be able to, like, we'll be spotted so fast. And we have a little bit of Gregor dialogue while Tech decides to say, I'll figure out a means of escape. I'll distract them. I start talking to Gregor and be like, why are you here? He's like, well, I was an instructor and I've defected, and then an alarm goes off, and Tech is just like, yeah, I used the clone encryption to distract him. And Gregor's like, clone codes don't work here. Like, this is new. Great. The alarms are going off and we've been spotted. And instantly, they're being sought after by both clone commandos and TK units. And this is awesome. Like, in multiple ways, and it gets better later. But there's a clear difference between clone troopers, especially commandos, and the TK units. Clone troopers are able to adapt to the situation, get into hiding. Granted, some of them are affected by like stun rifles and that stuff, but they put up a fight. TK units, they kind of take down casually, but they're running through a hallway, and you'll see at one point when they run through a hallway, Echo and Tech, they kind of hide behind this wall. I believe it's Tech who uses a stun ray to incapacitate the last TK trooper running through the hallway. And one of the helmets flies off, and they're like, this isn't a clone. And Gregor's like, those are replacements. And we learn that clone troopers are becoming obsolete. They're being replaced. And there's a funny dialogue, and this made me laugh out loud, where they're talking to Gregor. They're like, we thought you taught them everything. He's like, I didn't teach them everything. Or what do you say? Like, I didn't teach them everything. Wouldn't be very smart, would it? I thought that was so funny, because Gregor knew what he was getting into and that he wanted to escape, and just being like, why did I teach them everything? Like, that doesn't benefit me or anyone else, especially as we're escaping. So some of the TK troopers aren't being taught to the fullest extent. And this was funny. Well, they get on the elevator and they talk about the new replacements. And what we learned, the difference between clones and TK troopers. Clones, they were raised in a facility on Camino. They were raised to be soldiers to fight for the Galactic Republic. Well, the Galactic Republic has been dissolved and became the new Galactic Empire. Now, clones are becoming obsolete, so where are they getting troops? All around the galaxy. Doesn't matter, just so long as they feel they swear their loyalty to the Empire, which means that numbers aren't an issue and funding is less of an issue. Apparently, I think according to Tarkin in early episodes, recruiting new units and training them would cost half as much compared to continuing the clone program. And so as a result, there's more numbers of them. And one of the Bad Batch says, like, well, numbers are nothing compared to field experience. And the elevator doors open. There's a clone commando who has a white, black, and yellow on his uniform, which is an indicator that this guy is a higher version of a clone commando. Like, he's a higher rank. And he's also surrounded by TK units, and they start shooting inside the elevator. They immediately close the doors, and they were just like, you were saying? And this was awesome, because at this point, we see that they're all trying to escape, and the clone commandos they're so cool. They're so cool, especially this one in black and white. They get off the elevator and they start trying to run. And a clone commando, as the elevator's going down, he jumps on top of the elevator, does a roll, and jumps out, and then gets to the other side, climbs to the other side to pursue the Bad Batch and Gregor. And he gets to a fight with him. And he puts up a fight, too. It was a good fight. And he shoots Gregor. He shoots Gregor, like, kind of on the shoulder, upper left shoulder area. I think he gets multiple shots in. And the clone commando, he's fighting back. And it takes about 5 shots of the stun rifle, or whatever the stun, to take down the clone commando. And it was so cool. Clone commandos are so awesome. I want to see more of them so much. And maybe see some Imperial commandos later too. But this was so good. And the Batch has to temporarily retreat behind a door, and they're like, Gregor, you've been shot. Are you going to be okay? And Gregor's like, well, I've been in worse than this. I survived an explosion. Like, this is nothing. And with this dialogue in particular, it got me to thinking, do inhibitor chips not work if a clone has a different mental stability? Like, it's clear that Gregor has some issues with his head, especially after surviving that explosion. I don't know if he has the inhibitor chip. That hasn't been answered. But with his mental stability, does it make it so the inhibitor chip isn't as effective in controlling clones? I'm not sure, but we've had clones such as Hauser who seem perfectly rational-minded who are able to go against their inhibitor chip. In terms of loyalty to the Empire, I should say. I explored this in some of the last episodes, but does it work the same? Like, it seems to be a continuity error that Filoni needs to answer. And I think he will by the end of the season, but I'll get into that later. We also know that they talk to Gregor a little bit more, and they say, like, oh, what happened? He's like, I wanted out. I'm like, I got in here, and I thought the Empire wasn't that good. The problem is the Empire's not as forgiving to defectors. That's why I was captured. Well, Tech figures out that they need to escape through the reactor port, which just leaves, it's a ventilation system that's on the side of the mountain. So they blow up the vent and get in the reactor port, and we see a clone commando saying, oh yeah, they're escaping through the reactor port. This is when Omega and Wrecker are called in with the ship. And the ship is flying in, and at the same time, they're being pursued by commandos and TK units in the reactor port. And when the ship is closing in for the Bad Batch to be able to escape, they're being pursued, but by what would later be TIE fighters. So we have a bunch of Imperial pilots coming in. And Gregor and Tech manage to get onto the ship, and they have to temporarily make a retreat and go back around to rescue Echo and Hunter. And as this is happening, like, Tech is like, oh, like, Omega, you did an effective job at this. Like, it's sufficient. Let me take over from here. And they take down quite a few TIE fighter ships, or the up-and-coming TIE fighters. I don't remember the name of those ships. I think it's like a Vulture. No, it's not a Vulture droid. Doesn't matter. And they have to make their way around. But the ship's being shot at, and it shoots their systems off. And this is when Omega looks at the Gonk droid. It's like, Gonky, we need you to supply power. So she connects the power supply to the Gonk droid, and all of a sudden their systems are back up. And they're able to come back around and try to rescue Echo and Hunter. Now, before that, what's happening is a clone commando gets in really, really close and starts taking on, I believe it's Hunter. It's one of the two. And the clone commando accidentally exposes himself and gets shot and killed by TK troopers. It's very unfortunate. But they make their way back around, and you see, like, the exhaust port over here, and the ship, like the landing, the stairs of the ship, they're right over here, but they're also being chased by TIE fighters. So the ship starts to go down so that they're losing altitude, so that way they can eventually escape. Echo manages to jump onto the ship perfectly fine. Hunter, however, he reaches the bottom two stairs and falls off the ship. And this is when you see Omega going like, Hunter! Wanting to rescue him. And he's sliding down this mountain. He uses his knife to slow his fall. And it works, but he does land on the ground. It's a pretty gnarly fall. And the ship that the batch is on is trying to escape. They want to turn back around, and Hunter says, like, you need to go. You need to retreat. And Tech says, like, negative. The odds of you escaping are not in your favor. And Hunter reinforces, like, no, you need to escape. And Echo and Tech, it's not said verbally, but you can see it through the facial expressions, at least Tech's facial expression, but their body language, like, crap. Yeah, we gotta go. Like, we can't rescue Hunter at the moment. And of course, Omega comes in being like, we have to help Hunter, tell them to come back. And he's like, nope, not this time. And they go into hyperspace and they escape. So we know that the Bad Batch is going to come back to rescue Hunter. That's just how it goes. But Hunter is surrounded by the Old Republic gunships that have troopers on it, as well as commandos, and he just kind of surrenders. Well, the scene after that goes back to the Camino and the Kaminoans, and Admiral Rampart goes to the Prime Minister and says, like, hey, Prime Minister, so we noticed this scientist trying to evacuate. And he's like, yeah, it's disturbing. I'll punish her properly. But Rampart says, like, well, we actually have use for a scientist for our empire. Not so much a politician, so she's coming with me. And they walk away. And it seems like there's no sympathy to the Prime Minister from the scientist, Kaminoan. I can't remember her name for the life of me. There's no sympathy. And the next thing we see are two troopers that are in black approaching the Prime Minister with their guns, with their rifles, and the door closes. So it's implying that they shot and killed the Prime Minister. However, we don't know that for sure. For all we know, the Prime Minister might have fought back. But usually that plot device is meant to say, like, yeah, they killed him. They don't need the Prime Minister anymore. But we'll see. With how Star Wars has worked, people have escaped through explosions. In the Bad Batch on episode with Ryloth, Senator Non-Frita was shot in the head and was said to have survived. We don't know if he did, but stuff in Star Wars happens all the time where they could have died and they somehow survived. So for all we know, the Prime Minister somehow fought back, and the Kaminoans have some secret Kaminoan martial art technique where they do some crazy stuff. I don't know. But it's implied that he's killed. That's the point. Then the last scene we have is Hunter captured and in a cell. And the person we see approaching the cell is none other than Crosshair. To which Hunter says, like, yeah, I had a feeling you were coming. And the last thing we hear is Crosshair saying, I was hoping for the whole squad, but you'll do. And that's where the episode ends. So, what's Crosshair planning? I speculated this during the Ryloth episode, but look, with Gregor, he was, if he has an inhibitor chip, we don't know if he got rid of it. If he does, it's probably damaged, and it doesn't affect him. We know that inhibitor chips can get damaged. They don't work as effectively, such as what happened with the Bad Batch, since they were defective clones. And I wonder what Crosshair's planning. It seems like he cannot go against the inhibitor chip, like with his body moving and how it moves. But we also know that a lot of clone troopers who were under the influence of the inhibitor chip were like, I was trying really hard to fight it off. So is Crosshair maybe trying to like fight it off, but he's doing it in a roundabout way? Maybe he wants to capture the Bad Batch to help him be free of the inhibitor chip. I don't know. Because we know throughout the Clone Wars that of all the clones in the Bad Batch, like, I have a soft spot for Crosshair. I like Crosshair, but I've always liked the sniper type of people. But also he's the rebellious type. He was like the number one against authority when it came to all of the Bad Batch. And then when Order 66 happens, he was just like, yep, loyal to the Empire. I'm doing it. I'm going to hunt you down, Hunter. So I'm just wondering if there's like an ulterior plan where Crosshair wanted to capture the Bad Batch because they're the only ones that can help him. Like, that's what I think is going to happen. I kind of hope it happens. I think it'd be great. And I think it would be some great work. Just being like, I lost my free will, so I had to figure out a roundabout way to either be saved or just be free, even if it's through death. And the only people that can do it are the Bad Batch. Like, they're the people I trust the most. But he's being presented as being an antagonistic force. But again, he doesn't have his own free will. He can't really control his body and what his body is doing. He's kind of susceptible to the inhibitor chip. So I wonder if he has limited free will, or if he has limited will, I should say, not limited free will, with the inhibitor chip. Kind of like how Hauser did. Hauser was able to go against the Empire, but it's implied that the inhibitor chip was working. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll be honest, I'm going to predict that this is what happens. The Bad Batch ends up saving Crosshair because Crosshair actually had a plan that he had to think of on the spot that only the Bad Batch could free him of his inhibitor chip. I like Crosshair. There is also a chance that Crosshair could die, and he won't any longer be the antagonistic force. Honestly, I think that would suck. But we'll see what happens. Dave Filoni needs to, or whoever directs it or whoever writes it, I'm putting it on Filoni's shoulders since he's one of the producers. They really need to explore the inhibitor chips and how it affects clones, because right now it's kind of a continuity error where some clones are completely susceptible to it and some clones are able to go against it. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing the rescue of Hunter as he's captured by the Empire and how the Bad Batch gets involved again. I wonder if Gregor's going to get back involved. I kind of hope so. I hope Rex gets in there too, because in Rebels, it's Rex, Wolf, and Gregor that are found on the ATTE. So Rex and Gregor are going to be working closely again, and I hope it's to rescue Hunter, but we'll see. I don't have high hopes. I don't have high expectations of it. Just I'll kind of let go by the flow. We'll see what happens with the story. I'm actually excited. I'm actually pretty excited. I love seeing the rise of the Empire and seeing that power disparity. Like, clearly, clone commandos are way better than TK units at this moment in time, at least. It said that, you know, some stormtroopers are sharpshooters, but they miss at everything. I want to see these concepts explored. I want to see this expansion of the Star Wars universe. This episode didn't feel like filler. It was relevant to the Bad Batch. It wasn't some extraneous thing going on. And I'm excited. I'm excited again for this series. I wasn't excited before until after episode 1, and then the series kind of stagnated. A lot of people loved the Ryloth arc. I thought it was okay. But this one, finally, we're getting to the last episodes of the series, and I think season 1's gonna it's gonna land on a high note. I'd be surprised if they'd be able to disappoint. But it's not outside of the realm of possibilities, let's be honest. So, we'll see. Until next week, though, or maybe this Friday, I want to talk about more of the Bad Batch. Like, I've been enjoying this series, thankfully, even though I have deep criticisms at some points. But I'm looking forward to exploring more of these concepts. So until then, this is going to be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the content. Again, feel free to subscribe. Give this video a like. It would help me out a lot. If you got through all of this video, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. It really does. So until next time, everyone, enjoy your day. The geek way, of course. I'll see you later.